Hello friends, today I bring to you a game of food codes. Nah, that's boring. So, let's play food codes with zero Caprice Nice. Who loves Caprice Nice? No one does. Let's not play that busted card. Let's play Lakshmi in its place. We still need a way to defend our agendas while scoring them, and Lakshmi seems like a pretty good alternative. No influence cost, and push 3 depending on winning a side game. Of course, it has its own set of problems. You need to have both agendas available, one in hand, one scoring. But we'll see how this works. I'm up against a Valencia. This could be an okay matchup. I do run 3 ABTs and I'll be looking to fire them off if I get them. On the same token, a Lakshmi is fine sitting in a remote because it forces the blackmail out without causing me to lose the agenda. So immediately I get a pretty good start. Not so much the fact that I have an early Eve, but more of the fact that I found 2 ABTs. That is the agenda you want against Valencia. And 2 copies means that once I find Lakshmi Smart Fiber, I can very easily score my first ABT without contest. And to make things better, I find the Jackson Howard as well. Which draws me into my third ABT. Wow, okay, that is something. I do not need 3 copies of ABT. 2 will do, the other agendas are going in the bin. I do not want to be agenda flooded because getting hit by on HQ at this point will be a disaster. So I do force a blackmail that trashes the Eve. That's good, that's one less blackmail I need to worry about when firing my Lakshmi, but this leaves me a bit poor, so I need to be careful. Lakshmi has been found, it's time to go. I'm going to install Lakshmi, CVS, and the ABT naked. Unfortunately, I was trying to draw or bait a run on the server, but unfortunately he went for the naked remote instead, which I didn't think he would. So this means that I'm forced to rest the CVS along with the Lakshmi. This allows me to get 2 counters on the Lakshmi, which means that I can now defend my ABT. And with 1 click only on his side, this means that he has no way to fetch the ABT through some Enoch shenanigans like Singularity or Imp. So I don't have to worry about those. And I'll safely score the ABT out next turn. And finally, he runs R&D, which is completely fine for a single access, even if it's an agenda, that's no big deal. Now, I'm going to fire the ABT for sure here. I'm not going to attempt to try to score it with a Jackson. And all I wanted was 1 piece of ice. I didn't get it. Sure, I didn't hit any agendas, which is good, but I really needed a piece of ice. Why? Because when I fired Lakshmi, I was telling my opponent, I have an ABT in hand. Come get it. I only have 3 credits. I can't res anything meaningful. Come get it. Come get my second ABT. He did not come to get it. Instead, he went for the medium dig, which is pretty foolish, especially considering that there's a CVS in the remote already. So that was a bit of a misplay by my opponent. If I were on his end of the board, I would have ran HQ 4 times. Resing an ice via ABT would have saved me there because it would have given me 1 extra credit, which would allow me to res the architect that was on HQ. I didn't even have to put the ice on HQ. I would ice up the remote because that's how you win against Valencia. You get a rest ice on the remote. But anyway, all that doesn't matter because now he didn't run my HQ, my ABT is still fine, and he's going to trash everything in the remote. He's going to make sure that I cannot pull off that Lakshmi shenanigan again, and he's forced to access the CVS while at it, so I get a free purge. Here he makes the second big misplay. He did not trash the CVS. If you're running medium, you always trash CVS. Being at 1 to trash, there's no reason not to. So that was a very big misplay, and that definitely made the game a lot harder for him. And this gives me a huge breathing room because now I can find some way to score my ABT. Remember that it's never advanced. The more blackmails I draw out from him, the easier it is to score the ABT. I still have to respect that he always has blackmail available though, because of the same old thing on the board. So I'm going to install the ABT here and hope he doesn't run it. And to not draw his attention, I'm going to ice up R&D instead. If he was paying attention, he would know that I have an ABT in my hand and he would have to check it. He did not check it, so I get a free ABT off. With a Jackson on the table, it's a surefire. As long as I see 1 piece of ice, I should be good. Again, no ice, all assets and upgrades. I don't care whether there are agendas or not. I just needed 1 piece of ice to keep him out of my remote. Apparently that's too tall an order. So I'm not getting any ice from ABTs. This is a huge problem for me. I know I'm up 4 points, I'm potentially on match point, but there's no way I'm going to close out the game with a global food. I have very few 3-2s left in my deck. And now that he's played his files, I have no way to score agenda safely in a remote. My time is done. At this point, we are done with the early game. With the runner completely set up in terms of breakers, the only way I'm going to win now is by leveraging on my agenda score so far to catapult me further ahead. And this is why Corporate Sales Team is so good, and this is why I'm playing it in this deck. ABT and Corporate Sales Teams are two of the most aggressive agendas in the game because they enable you to score your last few agendas to win the game. In other factions, you'll be using Astroscript or Nisei. Both of those serve the same purpose. In HB, you are using Corporate Sales Team for money to rest ice and play Ash Traces. For ABT, is to rest ice for free, so you can score more agendas behind the remote. 2 failed ABTs is a huge problem. I'm very unhappy with the way that went. That is going to cost me the game. So, he now gets another medium run going, but again, what mistake is that? I have a res CVS on the board. It's res, for heaven's sake. And yeah, what's the point? What is the point? He's just going to get single accesses. I can purge anytime I wish. Of course, I'm not going to purge now, but that's something I can always do. So yeah, I have the winning agenda in my hand. It's called Global Food Initiative, and I can't score it. Even if I find an Ash, I can't score it. I have way too few credits, and he has a prepaid economic engine, which is insane, and Wildside, which is an insane draw engine. There's nothing I can do about that. So I need to find an alternative way to win. For traditional food codes, that entails winning 4 Caprice side games in a row. I don't have Caprice in this deck. What did I replace Caprice with? Lakshmi's Smart Fiber. With 2 global foods in my hand, I guess that's how I'm going to win. Now I have no more need for the fast track, which is usually used to double up my agenda so I can fire off Lakshmi. But for this game, I'm going to hopefully find a Lakshmi and try to score the food. It's going to be a very tall order, especially since my opponent's running my hand right now. After ditching 3 cards to Architect, he goes in 2 in 5 chance of seeing the global food, he gets it. Kind of expected, and this is really a disaster. With only 2 foods in my deck, I cannot score the food using Lakshmi. So, what can I do here? I'm really stuck. I can't score the food, so I guess my only line of play right here is to ignore the food and go for regular scores instead on 3-2 never advance agendas. I can't even do it with Corporate Sales Team. Corporate Sales is a 4-2 agenda which cannot be never advanced. I'm trying to crawl my way back with money, but things are looking pretty grim right now. On the bright side, my opponent seems to not know what he's doing either. He installed a Parasite on my Ichi, knowing full well that there's a CVS in the remote that he didn't trash even after running it twice earlier on. I don't know what he's doing, but one thing's for sure, he's not going to get into R&D anytime soon, so I don't have to worry about that. And to make things better for me, he dirty laundries into archives and purges himself. So I'm happy with that. But then he shows that he has an alternative win condition. It's called Keyhole, and it's pretty good, considering that both Jacksons are gone. 2 out of my 3 Jacksons, rather. Then he goes for my remote. Was I trying to sneak out a Vitruvius? It looks like it. Let's see if it really is. And yep, it was a Vitruvius that tried to sneak out. I left it on the table for 1 more turn because I mandatorily drew into a hedge fund and really wanted to play the hedge fund. I guess it was a mistake. Now we are on even points, and I don't have enough agendas in my deck to never advance to victory. So really, I have to switch to my final win condition, which is Lakshmi's Smart Fiber on 2 Corporate Sales Teams. That's a very tall order, but I don't seem to have any choice. The good news is, R&D, I can kind of stem the bleeding from R&D for now. I'm making a bit of money, and with Turing, I'm able to drastically slow him down. Turing's such a good piece of ice. One very good reason to play HB over any other faction right now. Basically, killed 3 of his clicks right there, and the Ichi doesn't help matters at all. He's forced to trash almost his entire hand for the fork to go through. Now, I really wish there was an Architect instead of a Turing. If that were an Architect, he would be forced to let me fire the Architect if he wants the fork to fire. Because an Architect protecting an Ichi would protect the Ichi, because if he chooses to break the full Architect, he cannot use the Cutlery's effect is null because he just used it to break a sentry, thereby saving my Ichi. Anyway, hypothetical situations aside, at least now I have a Turing on R&D which he cannot break. So I'm just gonna reconstruct my remote now that he destroyed the Eli on the remote. The ice destruction isn't the worst in the world because with ETF's ability and clicking for credits, I am able to get back on track, and I have a lot of ice in my hand. So I'm feeling okay right now. All I need to do is to stall out the game until I find 2 corporate sales teams and a Lakshmi Smart Fiber. Jackson will help me draw into them, so I'm going to use it immediately, even though I'd rather save it for Keyhole. This seems like just a smarter thing to do. Hyper drawing into the cards I need to win the game before he finds his Levy. Levy is a big problem. He's slowly but surely decking himself down to single digits in R&D. Now he finds his Parasite to deal with Turing. Clearly he doesn't run York. Parasite's the only solution, and it's pretty good. It's only 2 strength on that Turing. So in 1 turn from now, I will have to try to re-ice R&D, which is not too big of a problem. With the Turing in my hand, I can easily do so. So he plays the Dirty Laundry, gets through my Architect, and doesn't see the CST, the sales team. That's pretty good. Now over to me, I find the Lakshmi, so that's my combo almost complete. All I need now is a second corporate sales team and I can score 1 out. And that will be a huge deal. Scoring corporate sales team is a huge deal because it gives me a good credit inject to carry me over for the rest of the game. Right now I need to defend both R&D and a Lakshmi remote, which costs a lot of money to rest all the ice. Once I score a corporate sales team, things will get a lot better. Keyhole comes in, rest the Turing, kick him out, but he responds with a Deja Vu into double Parasite, allowing him to get past that Turing. So again, 1 turn from now, I need to re-ice R&D. He finds a turntable, and that's pretty bad news. Keyhole with turntable is really, really bad news for a Lakshmi deck that wants to try to score corporate sales team. So since I believe I had 2 Lakshmis. Oh no, I installed Breaker Bay Grid in the new remote and he promptly used Drive-By on it, which is fine. The most important thing here is to try to score 1 corporate sales team with the Lakshmi. I wanted the Breaker Bay Grid there so that I could res it as Lakshmi fodder. That wasn't going to work because now Breaker Bay is in the bin. So I need to find another card that I can res at instant speed so that I can do the Lakshmi combo. The best thing to do here is to install Lakshmi in 1 remote and corporate sales team in another. But I really wanted to keep the Jackson, so I did this, which was a lot riskier. If he ran the Lakshmi first, which is the new remote, I wouldn't be able to defend my corporate sales team. And I think he realized that as well. He knows I'm running Lakshmi, so he runs my remote first. And that's when the jig is up. I can't do anything about this. He trashes my Lakshmi. So this was a big misplay by me. I really should have just sacked the Jackson. I was just too afraid of double Keyhole into win. So because of this, he was able to fetch the corporate sales team, which I would have been able to defend otherwise if he had blackmailed my sales team first. So that was good play on my opponent's part. He knew what my deck was and he went for the remotes in the correct order. So this is the constraint that Lakshmi has. You need to have something else to res in conjunction with Lakshmi, and I just didn't have the time to install more ice. Nor did I have the money to. So what's the next plan? I more or less considered at this point. Life was really, really hard for me. And the best I could do was to just defend my Jackson at this point, because Jackson's the only thing that is helping me not lose against a Keyhole. I didn't really have any good ice to place on R&D, given that he's running Faust. All my Turings are used up, and he gets the Jackson. I'm going to recycle some cards, including the global food that's in the bin, of course, with my final Jackson. I'm not running any archive memories in this deck. So 1 more Keyhole will lose me the game. At this point, I start counting his influence to deduce whether he has Levy in his deck. I counted 11 influence, but I miscounted. I forgot that prepaid voice pad counts as 1 influence because of most wanted lists, which was ironic considering that I did take Parasite into account, but not the prepaid pads. And I was even remarking, wow, I haven't seen any prepaid pads in a while ever since most wanted list hit. Well, turns out he wasn't running Levy. Crazy stuff. I might have been able to pull a win here. Anyway, he does not find any agendas because, well, there are 3 of them in my deck and he happened to miss all 3 of them on that Keyhole. I'm starting to deck myself as well. But at this point, I was still thinking that one of his 2 cards in his hand was a Levy, which wasn't the case. So at this point, in actual fact, scoring the corporate sales team at this point under the toll booth was actually a very safe move. Instead, I didn't bother icing out R&D because I thought that the game was over. It wouldn't have made a difference anyway because the only ice I had available to me are the 2 Ichis, both of which can be clicked through. So either way, he was going to keyhole to try to win, and the only thing I can do is to rest the Architect, which is still good. He cannot break Architect with fouls, and he can't break it with only 2 cards remaining in hand, so I fire it, and I realize I lose the game. No matter what I do here, I can't win. I'm forced to install the ABT. I cannot install anything else because if I install anything else, he keyholes the ABT and wins the game. I have to install the ABT, and I can't place it in any of my remotes. If I place it in server 5, it mills the corporate sales team that's already in there, and I lose. If I place it in a new remote, I need to find an end run ice, which I don't have. Eli and Turing are available, and I can afford to rest those. However, he can simply click through it the next turn. Toll booth would have done the job, but alas, I was 2 credits off resing it. Lakshmi Smart Fiber, oh Lakshmi, want to love you so, but too many problems, way too many. If you want to start scoring agenda with Lakshmi Smart Fiber, it's a 3-card combo, just like C and Double Scorch. You'll need 1 Lakshmi and 2 of the same agenda. That's a big problem, because as you know, C Scorch is so difficult to assemble, without not to mention that you don't have Atlas counters in HB. And to make it worse, it can easily be disrupted by the runner. All they have to do is simply access your agenda. Boom! Your combo's gone. Even if you do get a combo as I did this game, you still need to be vigilant. Imp bypasses Lakshmi, which means you need CVS in your deck. Film Critic is a big problem for Lakshmi, especially when you're playing it in HB, because you don't have any natural means of getting rid of Film Critic, meaning that you need to run Snatch and Grab. That's awful. You also need Fast Track to increase your consistency. It's Atlas that can only be used on agendas, but you need it. You really do. You also need to ensure that the runner doesn't steal the agendas while you're holding them in HQ waiting for the rest of your combo to assemble. That's a tall order. Not to mention that once you've reviewed, as I did this game, I finally managed to pull it off with the double ABT. But even after I scored the ABT, I needed to worry about the runner running to my HQ and stealing the ABT that I reviewed the turn before. That's a big problem. Thankfully, my opponent didn't capitalize on it this game, but as I explained throughout the video, that is such a huge downside you have to play around. All these added up makes Lakshmi way too conditional. There's so many things you need to take note of. It just doesn't work very well. So for you folks out there who are eager to try Lakshmi for yourselves, I hope this video has exposed to you some of the big downsides to playing Lakshmi and what you have to take note of, and the possible counters, of which there are too many to list. I didn't know that Lakshmi was so vulnerable in so many ways myself. Then I tried it and it all became clear. It just isn't good enough to be a competitive card. Oh well.